Hi viewers, today we have Miss Apoorva joining us from the United Kingdom. She is a research analyst specializing in the Middle East and North Africa. So we are so glad to have her on the show. So welcome to the show, ma'am.
Thank you. Namaskaram.
Namaskaram. So the Israel and the Hamas war, this is the talking point of the whole world now. And Israeli troops have entered the Gaza Strip and they have started attacking the Hamas brutally. And Hamas, they are trying to defend the territory, but they are not as strong as Israeli forces. Uh, Moreover, the hospitals in Gaza are being razed down. So, what is this heading towards?
In the beginning itself, we need to understand that this entire conflict started in the early mornings of October 7th, which is a Sabbath for the Jews. It's a religious event because of which it was difficult for even Israelis to mobilize their reserves. Hamas had this kind of an attack is very unprecedented despite the kind of activities that have taken place before the conflict. Why I say the word unprecedented is because the nature by which Hamas had carried out the military operations against Israel. Even in the past, I mean, there have been Yom Kippur War, there have been several Israeli Arab war, but there have been none of the conflicts wherein the opposition forces have breached into Israel and taken over Israeli territories. Obviously, there have been times where the opposition forces have taken certain areas that were disputed, that they were in already disputed areas. But this is the first time where Hamas not only launched about 5,000 rockets in less than 5 minutes, which obviously overwhelmed the Iron Dome, which is the defense system in Israel to intercept the missiles launched by the Hamas and other militant groups against Israel. But at the same time, while they had launched rockets, they had attacked from water, air, and ground forces. Within a couple of minutes, they had started breaching the Israeli borders and taken over cities and various towns and regions on the borders of Israel and Gaza. So, in itself, is a huge unprecedented conflict for Hamas and Israel because no one around the world had anticipated this kind of an military style operation by Hamas. Stating that Hamas is considerably weak or not is a question altogether different. Obviously, by conventional means, Israel is definitely stronger, has much more military capabilities than Hamas. But at the same time, the what Hamas has achieved is something that ponders on the question as to how Israel was left unaware about it, what kind of intelligence failure took place, or on what grounds, I mean, in what aspect was Israel not military prepared to deal with this kind of a situation in the first place.
The Hamas from the Gaza Strip launched 5,000 plus rockets at the same time. So who would have funded the Hamas? Because they are not so well off to conduct these kind of strikes. And the question number two is Mossad is known for its intelligence, and Israel is known for its protecting the territory of them. So how did Mossad let it happen in the first place?
Who is funding Hamas? Now, Hamas, it is a well known fact that Iran supports Hamas, Hezbollah, and other militant groups in the region to exert its influence. Since Iran is isolated in the region as compared to other Gulf countries, does not have much of a relationship with most of the countries in the region, it tries to exert influence in the Middle East politics using these proxies. So it is well aware that Iran is one of the major donor to Hamas, not just financially, but also through military capabilities. Then there is Qatar. Qatar is also well known for funding Hamas, sending money for Palestinian humanitarian causes, amongst others. Lastly, Turkey. Turkey is also known for supporting Hamas by because there have been several news reports on how there are officers in of Hamas in Turkey, and at the same time Turkey also uh, funds Hamas through various organizations, including the Turkish Cooperation and Coordination Agency, where the funds are diverted for activities for military activities of Hamas.
The part to Mossad, how did it let it happen?
The second part being how this kind of a situation arose and how Israel was caught unaware. In these kind of situations, this is also a resultant of intelligence failure, A, and B, the recent political happenings within Israel. For the past couple of months, not just past couple of months, let's go a little further, let's go a couple of years. In the past 4 to 5 years, there have been about four general elections. I may be off on the numbers, but the number of general elections that have taken place with the coalition government, with the Israeli society being divided with regards to whom to vote and whom not to vote for the government of to come in the to come in power in itself, raised a kind of political instability. Because on one hand there was there was one government led by Yair Lapid, Naftali Bennett. On the other side, there have been the Likud party led by the longest serving prime minister of Israel, which is Benjamin Netanyahu. At that time, Netanyahu was also facing allegations for fraud, corruption, forgery, amongst other allegations. Now, in last year, Netanyahu Benjamin was elected as the prime minister of Israel in a coalition party, in a coalition government with parties that have been time and again accused of being extremely right wing, extremely having the supporting Israeli settlers in West Bank. There have been situations, there have been time and again wherein there have been multiple large groups that have entered the Al Aqsa Mosque. That, according to the Muslim world, Islamic world, that is a desecration of Al Aqsa Mosque, which is also known as Temple Mount. Al Aqsa Mosque is the third holiest mosque in the Islamic world after Mecca and Medina, which is in Saudi Arabia. Even prior to this conflict, there have been Israeli Jewish communities have stormed the Al-Aqsa Mosque on the fifth day of Safar, that started on September 29th. So that itself again was hurting the religious sentiments of the Muslim community, because according to the laws of the land, Jews are not allowed to enter Al-Aqsa Mosque. They are not allowed to offer prayers inside the Al-Aqsa Mosque. It's only reserved for Muslim religious practices. So first is the Israeli settlers issues. Second being the desecration of Al-Aqsa Mosque. Third, it was the recent political situation in Israel due to the judicial reforms that were being brought by the Benjamin Netanyahu government. Now, what were the judicial reforms? Judicial reforms that was based on the legislation passed by the Knesset uh, regarding the uh, reasonableness doctrine practiced in the Israeli courts. According to that legislation, the Supreme Court and the lower courts that have the rights to um, prevent any decision of the government based on its reasonableness doctrine, which means that if the Supreme Court or the judiciary feels that this particular decision by the government, XYZ, any decision by the government is unreasonable, is not on the well-being and well-being of the Israeli society, they can stop that decision from being implemented. Now, the judicial reform that was being bought by the government was that we are taking away that power from the Israeli judiciary. Israel judiciary system is considered for maintaining the checks and balances on the government. Already, the Benjamin Netanyahu government have been under direct pressure, have been accused for being controlled by violent Israeli settlers, having been in the government, and also being controlled by these kind of sentiments. At that time, also control, I mean, reducing the power of the judiciary eventually exploded on streets, because of which for weeks, for months, there have been protests in in Israel. There have been people who are coming out and stating that the government is curbing the judiciary. The government is reducing the power of the judiciary. The government is trying to supersede the powers and the entire judicial system. On the other hand, the government is arguing that the unelected judges, the judiciary, is having more power than it should have, because of which the functioning of the government is being reduced. So on both sides, on one side they are saying that the judiciary is superseding the government. On the other side, the Israeli society is feeling that the government is reducing the power of the judiciary. This led to a chaos, led to a protest that have been carried out for months. This is the first time when, for I won't say first time, but this reached such a situation where there was the international community, all the policy makers from around the world have been looking at this situation as to what is exactly happening. At this point of time, there were a lot of reservists and is currently officers in the Israeli defense forces that clearly stated that if this reform takes place, if this legislation is passed, if this legislation reduces the power of the judiciary, we are not going to come. We are not going to work. We are not going to. We are going to absolutely protest. So this was a situation where even the Israeli defense forces got involved. All of this has culminated to such a situation where people are now believing that it's not just the intelligence failure or the failure of the intelligence organizations in Israel, that they were not able to interpret or they were not able to foresee what Hamas is trying to do.